He meant to execute her, the Viking, until he looked at her face and everything shifted. The waves below crashed against jagged rocks, sending up plumes of mist that clung to the air like ghosts. Standing at the edge of the cliff, Ira tried to steady her breathing, though each inhale tasted of salt and fear. Behind her, the sounds of armor clanking and swords sliding from scabbards echoed through the mist. Ragnar approached silently, his boots crushing the loose stones with the sound of inevitability. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of midnight and eyes like sharpened steel. Every movement he made seemed measured, precise, as though he carried the weight of the entire kingdom on his shoulders. Ira knew who he always was in the stories whispered by the villagers, the Viking who showed no mercy, the man whose hands had spilled more blood than rivers could hold. She had expected fear to come first, but it didn't. It was anger, quiet and simmering, burning beneath the surface like a flame she could not extinguish. They had brought her here, accused her of treason, and tomorrow, or maybe today, she did not know, she would die by his hand. Yet something about the way he walked made her pulse quicken, even as she clenched her hands to her sides. Ragnar stopped a few steps away. His eyes scanned her face, and for the first time they did not harden into steel. They lingered, searching for something beyond duty, beyond the edge of the cliff and the cold, biting wind. And in that moment, Ira felt it too, a strange, unspoken pause between life and death, between hunter and prey. "You know why you're here," Ragnar said at last. His voice was low, almost thoughtful, carrying the weight of command. "I do," Ira replied, her voice steady, though it trembled slightly under the mist. "I know what they say I've done, but I swear I've done nothing against the crown. Nothing that would bring dishonor to my family." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Words are cheap, and yet here I stand, alive, speaking them," she said, her heart hammering in her chest. For a moment he said nothing. The wind whistled past them, and Ira could hear her own pulse, like a drum in the silence. The edge of the cliff seemed sharper now, closer, as if the fjord itself were holding its breath. Then, very slowly, Ragnar raised his hand, not the blade but the hand holding it. Something flickered in his eyes, something she could not name. Recognition, curiosity, or perhaps a shadow of doubt. Ira could not tell, but it was enough to make her hope just a little. "Do you fear me?" he asked finally, his voice quieter now. Ira's throat went dry. She wanted to answer truthfully, but fear was tangled with something else, something she would not admit. I fear what I do not understand," she said. Ragnar's lips curved just slightly, almost imperceptibly. A fleeting expression, gone as soon as it appeared. "Then you are honest, at least." The soldiers behind him shifted, and the sound brought her back to the cliff's edge. She glanced down at the frothing waves below. One misstep, one stumble, and she would be gone before the wind even noticed. Yet despite the danger, there was a strange calm within her, a defiance that would not bend even at the edge of death. "You are brave," Ragnar said. "Bravery and foolishness are neighbors, often living under the same roof." Ira met his gaze, feeling the strange tension twist between them. "Perhaps, but I have no desire to live under the roof of fear." Ragnar's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in calculation. He had been sent to end her life. That was the law, the duty of a Viking captain, the honor of the crown. And yet here he stood, hesitating. His blade gleamed faintly in the muted light, sharp and unforgiving, yet untouched. For a heartbeat, Ira thought she understood. She was not merely a prisoner. She was a mirror reflecting back the pieces of him he did not want to see. The cold heart of the Viking felt a crack forming, tiny but undeniable. "You have spirit," he muttered, almost to himself. "And yet the crown demands obedience." "Yes," she said softly. "And yet sometimes the crown cannot see what is true." The words hung between them, carried by the wind, heavy with meaning. Then, without warning, a distant howl echoed across the cliffs. It was long and mournful, a sound that made the very stones tremble. Ira's heart leapt. She did not know whether it was a wolf or some spirit of the fjord, but it was a reminder that death was always near, circling like a shadow. Ragnar stiffened. The sound was no stranger to him, yet it seemed to awaken something deep inside, a memory, a warning, a promise. He tightened his grip on the sword, yet did not lower it. Instead, he studied Ira as if measuring her, weighing her against something he had long forgotten. "You should not have come here," he said quietly, almost regretfully. "It would have been easier for both of us if you had stayed hidden, if you had run." Ira did not flinch. "And yet you would have hunted me down, even if I fled to the ends of the earth." Ragnar's eyes darkened, a storm behind the steel. "Perhaps. But something in you makes me question that now." Her pulse skipped. She could not understand why or how, but the truth of it was clear. For a man whose heart was said to be as cold as the fjord waters, a hesitation had formed. And in that hesitation lay a dangerous power, one that could tip the balance between life and death. "You hesitate," Ira said, her voice almost a whisper, "and hesitation is a gift I do not take lightly." Ragnar's jaw tightened, a subtle exhale escaping him. The soldiers shifted again, restless under the tension, but he ignored them. For a moment the cliff seemed suspended in time, the winds holding their breath, the waves frozen in mid-crash. "You speak boldly," he said, lowering the sword just enough for her to notice. "For someone about to die." "I have nothing to lose but life," she replied, "and perhaps life is not everything." Ragnar's eyes flickered to the pendant resting against her chest, half hidden beneath her cloak. A small, unassuming piece, yet it pulsed faintly as if alive. He recognized it, though he could not place when, where, or why. There was magic here, subtle and dangerous, and it wrapped around them both like an unseen chain. The wind picked up again, whipping her hair across her face. Ira brushed it aside, meeting his gaze. "I do not ask for mercy," she said. "I ask only that you see me as I am, not as the crown says I am." Ragnar's hand lingered over the hilt, a finger tracing the cold metal. Every fiber of his being screamed duty, yet the man before him, this woman, defiant and strange, tugged at something he thought long dead. He did not speak. Instead, he simply watched, feeling the pull of a force he could not name. A cry broke the moment, a soldier stumbling over the stones, the clatter of armor, the distant sound of horns carried by the wind. The spell of the cliff shattered and reality rushed back. Ira's heart sank. She had hoped for more than a moment, a pause, perhaps even a reprieve. Yet the world demanded its harshness again. Ragnar finally lowered the sword entirely. His eyes did not leave hers, and though his face betrayed nothing, Ira saw it in the subtle tension of his shoulders, the almost imperceptible quiver in his fingers. The Viking who was meant to execute her had stopped. For now death waited. But so did something else, something fragile, something terrifyingly new. The mist thickened, swirling around them as though aware of the change. A wolf's howl split the air again, long and mournful. And for the first time in her life, Ira felt not fear alone, but a strange, burning hope. Ragnar stepped back. "We will see what tomorrow brings," he said, voice low and careful. Ira swallowed, nodding, though her hands shook slightly. "We will," she said. And as the wind carried their words into the gray fjord, both knew that the tide had shifted. Nothing would be the same again. The cliff held its silence, waiting for the dawn. The sun rose weakly over the fjord, its pale light struggling through the clouds. The cliffs were still wrapped in mist, the frozen waters below hissing like a living thing. Inside the Viking stronghold, torches flickered against cold stone walls, casting long shadows that danced like whispers. Ira sat in a small cell, her hands pressed against the rough stone floor, listening to the sounds of the fortress waking. The faint clatter of armor, the rumble of voices, and the distant cries of seagulls all mingled into a strange lullaby of the north. She did not fear the soldiers who passed by, nor the cold walls that confined her. Her mind was occupied by one person, Ragnar. The Viking captain whose hands had been meant to end her life now carried her fate in his hesitation. She remembered the way his eyes had lingered on her, the almost imperceptible quiver in his posture, the strange pull between them that had nothing to do with duty. Her heart both ached and trembled at the memory. Ragnar, meanwhile, walked the corridors with the weight of the crown pressing on his shoulders. His usual certainty was tempered by an unfamiliar thought that clung to him like the morning fog. Ira. He could not name it, this intrusion of curiosity and something else. Desire. Admiration. Or was it fear of what she represented? Power, intelligence, defiance. He had never felt this pull before, and it unsettled him more than any battle ever could. He approached her cell, key in hand, and paused outside the door. She looked up as he entered, her eyes meeting his. Neither spoke at first, and yet the silence between them was filled with unspoken words, tension like a taut bowstring ready to snap. "You are awake," he said finally, his voice low. "I do not sleep well in chains," Ira replied. She did not lower her gaze. "And you do not seem to sleep well in silence." He glanced away for a moment, then returned his gaze to her. "Silence is easier when the mind does not question itself," he said. "But you make it difficult." Ira tilted her head, sensing the small cracks in his armor. "Do I make you question your duty?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ragnar did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened, and he looked toward the shadows, as if seeking guidance in the cold stone walls. "Perhaps," he said at last, "perhaps it is not your fault. Perhaps it is mine." Ira's pulse quickened. There was an honesty in his words she had not expected, a vulnerability that was rare in someone like him. "We are all prisoners," she said softly, "of what we must do. And yet we can still choose, if only for a moment." He studied her, the faint light glinting in his dark eyes. "Choice," he muttered, "a dangerous thing for those who follow the crown." "You are not like the others," she said, leaning forward slightly. "I can see it. You are more than a sword, more than a shield. You are human." Ragnar's hand brushed against the hilt of his sword, a subtle gesture of unease. He had been trained to suppress human feelings, to kill without hesitation, to obey without question. Yet the words of a woman, one he was supposed to execute, were cutting through him like sunlight through ice. "I do not know what I am anymore," he admitted quietly, "and that scares me more than any enemy I have faced." Ira's eyes softened. "Fear is not weakness," she said. "It is proof that we live, that we care, that we can still choose." The tension between them shifted, no longer about duty or fear alone, but about something deeper, something neither of them could name. For a moment the walls of the cell seemed to vanish, and all that remained was the silent, fragile connection that had formed on the cliffs, growing stronger with every glance, every word. Ragnar stepped back, breaking the spell. "You will remain here for now," he said. His voice was firm again, but his eyes betrayed him. "I cannot let you roam free." Ira nodded, hiding the hope that flickered inside her. "I understand," she said, "but I will not break." "You would not survive if you did," he muttered, though it was unclear whether he meant physically or emotionally. Later, when the halls were quiet and the torches had dimmed, a faint pulse of light caught Ira's eye. Her pendant, hidden beneath her cloak, shimmered softly. She reached for it, feeling the subtle warmth against her skin. She did not understand its power, only that it responded to Ragnar's presence. Something ancient, something older than the kingdom itself, stirred within her. Ragnar, standing outside her cell, felt it too. The pulse of energy, faint yet undeniable, resonated in his chest, pulling at something buried deep within him. He had seen many strange things in his life, omens, spirits, signs, but this was different. It was personal. It was tied to her. As days passed, the connection between them grew, subtle but unbreakable. Ira learned to read the small gestures, the quiet tension in his posture, the way his eyes lingered longer than necessary. Ragnar found himself watching her when he thought no one was looking, studying the strength in her gaze, the intelligence in her quiet movements. One night, When the moon hung low over the fjord, casting silver light across the fortress, Ragnar approached her cell once more. The corridors were silent save for the distant sound of waves. He stopped outside her door, listening to her breathing. "You should rest," he said softly. "I cannot," Ira replied, her voice steady. "Sleep will not come until the truth is known." Ragnar frowned. "And what truth is that?" Ira's hand brushed the pendant. "That there is more to this world than swords and crowns, that some forces, some power, cannot be measured by fear alone." He felt a shiver run down his spine. "Power?" he asked cautiously. "What do you mean?" "I do not know fully," she admitted, "but I feel it in me, and I feel it in you. Something that is waiting, something that could change everything." Ragnar's hand hovered near the door. He wanted to touch her, to feel the connection, to see if it was real. Yet he held back, restrained by duty, by fear, by something he could not name. "You are dangerous," he said finally. "And not because of swords or magic. Dangerous because you make me question everything I thought I knew." Ira's eyes softened. "And yet you stay." He did not answer. The silence between them was heavy, filled with longing and uncertainty. It was a chain neither could see but both felt, binding them together more strongly than iron or oath. The next day, news came that a rival clan had sent an emissary to the fortress. They had infiltrated the northern fjord, seeking to challenge the crown and claim its power for themselves. The hallways buzzed with tension, soldiers preparing for battle, banners fluttering like the wings of dark birds. Ragnar's eyes found Ira's. "You will remain in your cell," he ordered, but there was no harshness in his voice now, only concern. "I cannot risk your life." Ira nodded, hiding the small surge of relief. "I will obey," she said, "but I will not cower." He hesitated, looking at her, then at the door, then back at her. "I am not sure which is more dangerous," he muttered, "the enemy outside or what stirs inside these walls." Ira did not speak. She only looked at him, the quiet strength in her gaze a challenge and an invitation all at once. As the soldiers readied the fortress for battle, strange occurrences began to unfold. Shadows moved in the halls where no one stood, whispers echoed through empty corridors, and the pendant around Ira's neck pulsed with increasing intensity. She felt a connection to the fortress, to the winds outside, to the Viking captain who watched over her. Ragnar noticed it too, the subtle hum of energy, the weight of unseen eyes upon them. It unsettled him, yet drew him closer. Something ancient was awakening, something tied to Ira and perhaps to him as well. That night, as the northern wind howled around the fortress, Ragnar stood outside her cell once more. "Tell me," he said, voice low and urgent, "what are you hiding? What is in that pendant?" Ira's fingers brushed it, feeling the warmth, the pulse. "I do not know," she admitted. "But it calls to you as it calls to me, and I believe it has chosen us." Ragnar's hand clenched. "Chosen us for what?" Ira met his gaze, unflinching. "To survive," she said softly, "to change everything. And to see whether the heart can conquer duty, or whether duty must break the heart first." The sound of horns blew across the fjord, echoing through the stone walls. The rival clan was approaching, and the fortress would soon be tested. Ragnar turned toward the door, then paused, glancing back at her. "You will not be alone in this," he said quietly. "Whatever happens, I will stand by you." Ira's chest tightened, hope and fear twisting together. "And if you fail?" "I will not fail," he said, though the truth of uncertainty lay heavy beneath the words. As the first soldiers of the rival clan appeared on the horizon, the pendant flared with sudden light, sending shadows dancing across the cell walls. Ira felt the stirrings of her power, strange and unfamiliar, and Ragnar felt the pull of it like a current in his veins. The northern wind carried their words, their silence, and their unspoken bond across the fjord. For the first time, both knew that the battle ahead was not just against an enemy clan, but against fate itself. The night stretched long and uncertain, full of tension, longing, and untested power. And somewhere between duty and desire, between fear and hope, the chains of their lives, of their hearts, began to twist together, binding them in ways neither fully understood. The northern forest was alive with whispers, shadows twisting and turning as though they had a mind of their own. Moonlight poured through the thick canopy, casting silver streaks across the damp ground. The wind carried the distant echoes of battle, the clash of swords, the shouts of soldiers, and the low rumble of thunder from beyond the mountains. Ira and Ragnar moved carefully, their senses stretched, alert to every sound, every flicker of shadow. Ira's hands glowed faintly, the pendant pulsing like a heartbeat. Her powers had grown stronger in the forest, yet she still felt the pull of something darker, an ancient force that had awakened with her. She could feel it in the roots beneath her feet, the mist curling around the trees, and in the energy that hummed between her and Ragnar. "We cannot hide," Ragnar said quietly, his voice steady but low. "The enemy approaches, and whatever lurks here will not wait for us to be ready." Ira nodded, her gaze fixed on the shifting shadows. "I know, but we have each other. That is our strength." He studied her, the quiet bravery in her eyes, the power she now wielded, and felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. "I have faced many battles, Ira, many enemies, but this is unlike anything I have known, and yet I will not let you face it alone." The mist thickened, swirling around them like a living thing. A low growl echoed through the trees, followed by the sound of snapping branches. Ira tightened her grip on the pendant, and the light flared brighter, pushing back the shadows. From the darkness, a massive shape emerged. A creature formed from the forest itself, roots and shadows entwined, eyes glowing with an eerie green light. It towered above them, a being older than any human memory, ancient and powerful. Ragnar stepped forward instinctively, sword drawn. "Stay behind me," he ordered. Ira shook her head. "No," she said firmly. "We face this together." The creature lunged, its massive limbs striking the ground, sending tremors through the earth. Ragnar met it with his sword, each strike ringing against the creature's shadowed form. Ira raised her hands, channeling the energy of the pendant. Silver light shot forth, illuminating the forest in blinding brilliance. The creature roared, recoiling from the power, yet it did not retreat. Ragnar moved with precision, his sword striking with force and skill honed over years. But he realized that strength alone would not defeat this enemy. He glanced at Ira, who was calm yet focused, her eyes closed as she drew power from the pendant. She extended her hands, and vines erupted from the forest floor, wrapping around the creature, slowing its movements. "Ira," Ragnar shouted, "do not let it control you." "I am not afraid," she called back, her voice steady. "I will control it. We must together." The pendant's light flared brighter than ever, the silver glow engulfing both Ira and Ragnar. The forest trembled, leaves and branches shaking as though caught in a storm. The creature let out a deafening roar, thrashing against the vines that bound it. Ira's energy surged, and the light from the pendant began to spread, reaching into the very air, illuminating the shadows that had haunted the forest for centuries. Ragnar felt a warmth in his chest, a pull of courage and resolve. He realized then that this battle was more than survival. It was about trust, about faith in one another. He moved closer to Ira, raising his sword in a protective arc, striking the creature's limbs whenever they broke free from the glowing vines. "You can do it," he said, his voice steady. "I believe in you." Ira opened her eyes, and the silver light from the pendant reflected in them like stars. "Then we do it together," she whispered. She focused all her energy on the pendant, and the creature shrieked, a sound like the cracking of ancient stone. Its form began to unravel, roots snapping, shadows dissolving into mist. The ground shook violently as the last of the creature's form disappeared into the fog. The forest fell silent, the oppressive darkness retreating. Ira's hands dropped to her sides, and the light from the pendant dimmed to a gentle glow. She breathed heavily, exhaustion and relief washing over her. Ragnar sheathed his sword and stepped closer. "You were incredible," he said quietly, all clear in his voice. I have never seen anything like it." Ira smiled faintly, though her chest heaved. "I am only beginning to understand what this power means, and what it asks of me." Ragnar looked at her, and for the first time he saw her not as a prisoner, not as someone he was supposed to execute, but as a force equal to any warrior, a heart that could change the course of kingdoms. "Then we face it," he said. "Whatever comes next, together." The forest seemed to hum softly, the shadows now gentle and still. The danger had passed, but both knew this was only the beginning. The rival clans would not wait, and the crown's court would demand answers. Yet in this moment they had survived, and the bond between them had solidified into something neither could deny. "Ragnar," Ira said softly, stepping closer, "I could not have done this without you. Your strength, your courage, it guided me when I feared I would fail." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I could not have faced it without you," he replied. "You changed me, made me see that strength is not just in the sword but in the heart." Ira felt warmth spread through her chest. "Then we are stronger together," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The pendant pulsed faintly, as if acknowledging their bond. Ira realized that it had not only amplified her power but had also connected their fates. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one, united in purpose and heart. The distant sounds of the battlefield reminded them that the war outside was far from over. The rival clans still pressed, seeking to take the crown and claim power for themselves. Ira knew her duty was not only to survive, but to protect those who could not wield the power she now carried. Ragnar, ever loyal to the crown, had begun to see the true strength of mercy and trust. As they moved through the forest, returning toward the fjord and the stronghold, they encountered small groups of soldiers, some loyal, some hesitant. Ragnar's presence commanded respect, while Ira's power inspired awe and caution. Together they led their companions, guiding them through the forest with skill, courage, and the quiet authority born of shared struggle. Night fell fully over the fjord, and the stars began to glimmer above. Ira and Ragnar paused on a ridge overlooking the frozen waters, the wind carrying the scent of pine and sea spray. The forest behind them was quiet, at peace, yet they both knew it had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would not be forgotten. Ragnar turned to Ira. "We have survived this night," he said, "and yet I feel that our greatest trials are still ahead." Ira nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I feel it too, but I also feel hope, and that hope is stronger than any fear." He took her hand gently, a silent promise passing between them. "Then we face the future together. No matter what comes, I will stand by you, always." Ira felt a tear slip down her cheek, though she did not move to wipe it. "And I by you," she whispered. "For everything we are and everything we will become." The northern wind swept across the fjord, carrying with it the promise of change. The kingdom would never be the same, nor would they. But the bond forged in shadow, battle, and the awakening of ancient power had made them stronger than they had ever imagined. The first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, casting gold across the icy waters. The frost sparkled in the sunlight, and the forest seemed to breathe with renewed life. Ira and Ragnar stood side by side, their hearts aligned, their purpose shared. The darkness had tested them, the curse had risen, and yet they had emerged, not just alive but transformed. Ragnar lowered his head slightly, brushing his lips against her forehead in a silent gesture of devotion. "You are remarkable," he said softly. I am honored to stand beside you." Ira smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "And I am honored to face what comes with you." As they descended toward the fjord, the fortress loomed in the distance, scarred but still standing. The crown awaited, the rival clans schemed, and the world beyond was filled with uncertainty. Yet within them, a quiet certainty had grown, a certainty that they were no longer defined solely by duty, fear, or power. They were defined by the bond they had forged, by the courage they had found in each other, and by the choices they would continue to make together. The pendant pulsed once more, a gentle glow that reflected the rising sun. Ira felt its warmth, a reminder of the force within her, of the power they now shared, and of the journey that still lay ahead. And as the wind swept across the fjord, carrying with it the scent of pine, sea, and possibility, Ragnar and Ira knew, without a doubt, that together they could face whatever the world might bring. The forest behind them whispered softly, not of danger but of promise. And the curse that had awakened in its depths had found redemption in the hands of those brave enough to face it, and strong enough to love despite it.